Barry Gibb, the last surviving Bee Gee, once surrounded by roaring crowds, flashing lights and his brother's harmonies, now spends his days in a life so quiet, so private, and so heavy with memory that fans barely recognize the man he's become. How did the voice behind How Deep Is Your Love end up living in silence? What happened after fame faded and after he lost the three people he loved most? This is the heartbreaking truth of Barry Gibb's life today. The last Bee Gee, carrying the weight of a legacy he never asked to carry alone. Barry Gibb now lives quietly in his secluded seaside mansion in Miami, far from cameras, crowds, and the world that once adored him. At nearly 80, he isn't battling a major illness, nor is he confined to assisted living. What he suffers from is something far more invisible: withdrawal. He avoids public events, rarely leaves home, and hasn't truly stepped back into the spotlight since the Kennedy Center honors in 2023. Though his children and grandchildren live nearby, people he once called the last light in a dark room, Barry keeps a gentle emotional distance, not out of coldness, but out of fear. In an interview with The Guardian, he admitted, "Family is all I have left, but I can't show it the way normal people do." He also avoids anything he considers even slightly dangerous. Simple things like boiling water, driving at night, or using a gas stove land on his personal no list. Some of this comes from a childhood accident. Most of it comes from a lifelong fear of losing control. As he once told Rolling Stone, "I've seen too many things disappear without warning. Since then, I don't believe in safety." His home is built like a sanctuary. Anything connected to his past, the Bee Gees, his brothers, their music, is locked away in a private room. Only Linda, his wife, is allowed to enter. She is the one person who can still reach whatever soft human part remains in him. Yet even she admits he barely talks anymore. For a man who spent 50 years expressing his soul through melody, that silence says everything. Barry now finds comfort only in small, harmless joys. Cartoons with his grandkids, planting trees, quiet walks at dusk when no one can see him. "I feel like a kid again watching Bugs Bunny," he once joked. The stage no longer interests him. The applause feels like something from another life. When asked about the future, he simply says, "I don't make plans. I just hope I wake up tomorrow." It is the answer of someone who once conquered the world, and now measures life one morning at a time. Journalists still call him a living legend, but Barry doesn't live like one. He avoids attention, doesn't care to be remembered, and seems almost relieved at the idea of fading from public memory. In a CBS News interview, he said quietly, "I don't feel anything about whether people remember me or not, and I think that's okay." But those who know his story wonder, is it truly okay? Because Barry Gibb has been living a kind of slow, silent goodbye, not just to fame, but to music, to joy, and to the belief that songs could heal the wounds his life left behind. And that silence didn't begin in old age. It started long before, at a moment no one saw coming. In 1948, in a modest apartment on the Isle of Man, 2-year-old Barry Gibb reached for a boiling teapot and pulled it onto himself. The burns were catastrophic. His skin turned necrotic, gangrene set in, and doctors told his parents he had less than half an hour to live. Somehow, against every prediction, he survived. Recovery was its own quiet tragedy. Barry spent 2 years in the hospital, wrapped head to toe in bandages, isolated from the world. And after he was finally discharged, he didn't speak for another 2 years. He simply stared into the distance, as if the world had slipped out of reach. Decades later, he explained, "I lost the ability to speak, not because of my body, but my mind. I stopped believing anyone was listening." That early silence shaped his entire inner life. When the Gibb family moved to Manchester in 1955, Barry hoped things would change. Instead, he was separated again. His father took him to live elsewhere, while his mother and siblings, Robin, Maurice, and Leslie, stayed with an aunt. For a child who had already endured years of isolation, it felt like another abandonment. Barry later admitted, "I never understood why I was kept apart. People said it was necessary, but to me it felt like being left behind." Those early years didn't just leave scars on his skin, they carved a deep fear of attachment into him. He grew up questioning whether love could last, whether every relationship would eventually break. That quiet doubt followed him forever. You can hear it in his early 70s ballads like Run to Me and I Started a Joke, songs filled not with heartbreak, but with the ache of standing just outside of life, watching it unfold without feeling fully part of it. As he grew older, Barry developed a need for control, a way to protect himself from the chaos he feared. He arranged every detail of the Bee Gees' work, song structure, album order, stage positions. It wasn't ego, it was survival. If he held everything together tightly enough, maybe nothing would disappear without warning. He lived carefully, almost obsessively, always carrying antiseptic, checking the stove before bed, avoiding anything unpredictable. Nobody outside the family knew these habits during the height of the Bee Gees' fame, but they reveal something he never said aloud. Barry never believed he truly deserved to be in the center. And now, as the world celebrates him at nearly 80, Barry often meets praise with quietness. Not pride, not aloofness, just the silence of that same little boy who once stared into space, wondering where he belonged. Yet the irony remains. The child who never felt he had a place in the world became the heart of one of the greatest musical groups in history. When Barry Gibb entered his 20s alongside Robin and Morris, the three brothers officially became the Bee Gees, a group whose early songs overflowed with longing, doubt, and the ache of wanting to belong. By the mid-1970s, they didn't just rise to fame, they ruled it. Saturday Night Fever became the best-selling soundtrack in history, and hits like Stayin' Alive, Night Fever, and How Deep Is Your Love didn't just fill radio stations, they defined an entire era. Barry's soaring falsetto turned him into a global icon. Looking back, he admitted, "We were no longer normal people. We were swept up in a whirlwind we created ourselves." But that whirlwind soon collapsed. In 1979, the Disco Sucks movement erupted across the U.S. What looked like a music backlash was fueled by deeper tensions over race, gender, and pop culture. As the most recognizable faces of disco, the Bee Gees became the prime targets. Radio stations banned their music, the press mocked them, and a Chicago DJ staged a disco demolition night where thousands burned Bee Gees albums in a stadium. For Barry, it was a shock unlike anything he'd experienced. One moment he was on top of the world, the next he was plunged into a cultural freefall. "You get kicked around," he later said. "Then one day people love you again, then kick you again. That's the cycle of my life." The humiliation forced Barry to pull back. He stopped appearing on television. The Bee Gees quit releasing new group material and instead wrote hit songs for other artists. Kenny Rogers, Dolly Parton, Barbra Streisand, allowing them to keep creating music without facing the hostility head-on. Privately, Barry became even more guarded. The man who once crafted every melody now calculated every step he took outside his own front door. To him, the price of fame wasn't just the loss of privacy. It was the realization that the world could love you loudly one day and tear you apart the next. Through all the chaos of fame, one of the few steady forces in Barry Gibb's life was his wife, Linda Gray. In an industry overflowing with temptation and betrayal, Linda was the rare constant. She once turned down a dinner invitation from Steve McQueen just to spare Barry any worry. She refused advertising deals and reality show offers when Barry, exhausted but eager to please everyone, couldn't say no himself. Barry often said, "My brothers wrestled with demons in their heads, but I was luckier. I had my wife as a shield." Yet even Linda couldn't protect him from the fractures forming inside. Despite their massive success, Barry constantly doubted himself. Part of him knew he was the Bee Gees' musical backbone, the one who shaped their sound. But another part felt unworthy, even unnecessary. He once admitted, "I never liked interviews. I don't know what to say. I'm not good at answering questions about myself." At the height of his fame, that seemed modest. But in the aftermath of the '70s backlash, it sounded like someone slowly erasing himself. The man who once made the world listen began choosing silence. And as his voice faded, so did other things. The Bee Gees continued, but the momentum was gone. New songs didn't land the way they used to. Awards disappeared. The public's attention shifted elsewhere. And Barry, instead of fighting it, simply retreated. When the lights dimmed and the applause faded, what remained for him was an overwhelming sense of loss. On March 10th, 1988, Barry Gibb answered a phone call that would haunt him for the rest of his life. Andy Gibb, the youngest brother, was gone. The official cause was myocarditis, but everyone understood the truth. Andy's heart had been worn down for years by addiction, fame, and the industry that had chewed him up and thrown him aside. For Barry, the loss wasn't just sorrow, it was guilt. Andy had never been an official Bee Gee, yet Barry always felt he was his closest mirror. "We were alike in everything from looks to thoughts. I thought I could save him, and I was wrong," he later told the Irish Times. The last words between them, spoken in harsh, tough love, were meant to jolt Andy into getting clean. Instead, they became their final conversation. Days after that cold exchange, Andy was gone. And Barry carried that guilt like a scar he could never erase. Before that wound could heal, another tragedy struck. On January 12th, 2003, Maurice Gibb, Robin's twin and the quiet backbone of the Bee Gees, died suddenly from complications during surgery for a twisted intestine. His heart stopped under anesthesia. Barry, still in the air rushing to the hospital, never got the chance to say goodbye. Maurice was the brother Barry believed would stay with him until the end. They shared the same humor, the same calm, the same instinct to steady each other through chaos. Losing him felt like losing the center of the group, and the center of himself. Barry later said, with painful honesty, "We couldn't keep calling ourselves the Bee Gees without Mo. It's like calling a body human after losing its heart." He and Robin retired the Bee Gees name, but privately, Barry was collapsing. Music, once his escape, now felt like a graveyard of memories. He avoided singing the songs Maurice had played on. He spent hours alone in the studio, staring at empty pages, unable to write a single note. And then came the final blow, one that felt almost cruel in its timing. In 2012, Robin Gibb died after a long battle with colon cancer and kidney failure. Of all Barry's relationships, theirs had been the most complicated. In the last 5 years of Robin's life, the two barely spoke. Creative conflicts, management disagreements, and old family wounds had built a quiet wall between them. Barry later admitted to the Daily Mail, "I lost 3 brothers without being their friend." And about Robin specifically, "In those last 5 years, we couldn't connect anymore." This wasn't just grief. It was devastation. He wasn't only mourning the brothers he loved, he was mourning every chance he would never have to fix things. 3 funerals, and not a single moment to forgive or be forgiven. After Robin's death, Barry sank into a deep depression. He stopped performing, stopped writing, ignored phone calls, and even withdrew from family dinners. Some days he didn't leave his room at all. Without Linda, his wife of over 50 years, he might never have found his way back. Linda later remembered telling him, "You've cried enough. Get up, make music again. I won't let you live like this." Those simple words became the rope that pulled Barry out of the dark. He returned to the studio and released In the Now, his first album in nearly a decade. But it wasn't a comeback. It was a eulogy. Every song felt like a goodbye to the brothers he had lost. "I'm the last survivor, but no one told me how to live as the last one," he told CBS News. At home, Barry quietly put away old photos, removed certain songs from his playlists, and every night played fragments of the past: Robin's laugh, Maurice's soft harmonies, Andy's unfinished demos. Then he'd close his eyes, comforted by one thought. If tomorrow didn't come, he had heard the voices he loved most. One last time. In 2018, Barry Gibb was knighted, Sir Barry Gibb, for a lifetime of music and charity. In 2023, he stood among giants at the Kennedy Center Honors. Younger artists lined up to thank him for songs that had shaped their childhoods, their careers, their dreams. At the night's brightest moment, Barry said only one thing: "Without my brothers, I wouldn't be standing here." No tears, no smile, no one beside him. Just a lone man in a spotlight meant for four. To the world, it looked like a moment of triumph, but Barry felt none of it. "I'm not sure what I feel anymore," he told CBS. "Everything came too late. When you lose the three people you loved most, no award makes you fully happy." In 2021, he released Greenfields, the Gibb Brothers Songbook Volume 1, reimagining Bee Gees classics with Dolly Parton, Keith Urban, Miranda Lambert, and others. It was a success, but Barry refused to watch the Bee Gees documentary, How Can You Mend a Broken Heart? "I hear people love it," he said, "but I can't watch it. I don't want to see my brothers on screen. Vivid, but no longer here." That was his deepest wound. He could no longer befriend his memories. Barry rarely speaks about legacy, but others speak loudly for him. Dolly Parton called him the heart of a generation. Michael Bublé said, "How Can You Mend a Broken Heart?" launched his career. Critic Paul Gambaccini placed the Bee Gees' influence just behind Lennon and McCartney. Yet Barry accepts every compliment with a small, distant smile, not out of pride, but out of understanding. Awards mean nothing without the people you once shared the stage with, and he has no one left. What remains now is the echo of old Bee Gees songs drifting through cars, cafes, films, and YouTube covers. To the world, it seems like a beautiful legacy. To Barry, it's only an empty shell. In a rare recent interview, he ended with a single quiet line: "I don't know if people will still remember me. And if they don't, that's okay." Today, at nearly 80, Barry Gibb's life is quiet, distant, and far removed from the brilliant chaos he once shared with his brothers. He is the last Bee Gee standing, a living echo of a group that changed music forever, yet now walks through his final chapter in solitude. But now we want to hear from you. What part of Barry Gibb's journey moved you the most? His rise, his losses, or the quiet way he lives today? Share your thoughts below, and if you'd like to see more emotional stories about icons like Barry, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss our next deep dive.